Hey everybody, welcome to Grimsforge Gaming. Today we are going to cover my Ghost of Sparta build. I've had actually 3 people this week that have asked me about this build, and I figured I would kind of show you what I'm running, give you options, other options that if you want to run those, and then we'll give you a rhyme or reason why we're running what we're running. We'll jump right in and explain it all. Looking at the gear, right now we are running 2-piece Mighty Chudan. And the reason we're running Mighty Chudan is a couple things. Number one, when we look at our ability bar, we're short on space to get things done. And so that was a problem. Number two, trying to find that perfect juggle between magic abilities and stamina abilities and still having enough to heal ourselves. We knew that there were certain abilities that we absolutely wanted on the build. We wanted to have fragmented shield on the build. We wanted to have resolving vigor. We wanted to have cauterize. That's our healing kit right now. When rally, um, becomes more reliable of a heal. Right now it's hit or miss with its burst heal. Once that kind of calms down, maybe we go to a dual wield 2-hand setup, but right now we're dual wield. And it's been working really well. So um, we have a lot of abilities that are very high costing in Magicka, and we we just simply did not need to add another Magicka costing ability on the bar. And so some people will say, I've actually even got a comment from this, what level of noob, is this that you don't run hardened armor? And I know exactly what I'm doing on the build. Mighty Chudan is going to give me that major resolve that we need. Um, so we're not missing out on the armor buff. And you gain a damage shield on this one. If you run the other morph of it, the other morph equates to 2,500 damage over like 20 seconds or 14 seconds. 2,500 damage, volatile armor. And that's I don't care about that. That's insignificant damage, right? The other thing is, while active, your armor returns 738 magic damage to attackers, and that's fine. That's cut in half. That's not very much against player characters, but everything adds up. The most important thing that we're losing by not running hardening armor here is going to be while a Draconic Power ability is active, your healing received is increased by 12%. And so we will lose 12% healing. And that was something that I had to kind of gauge. Do I want to add hardened armor to my slot in place of fragmented shield? I couldn't lose either one of these. I didn't want to lose this. This is my form of mobility, and it cuts a lot of the incoming damage. Okay, so I couldn't lose that, and it was either going to be molten armaments or it was going to be rally, right? So our back bar is pretty much set, and that leaves our front bar. And our front bar is pretty much set. The only thing that I could probably come off is going to be camouflage hunter. And I don't want to lose the weapon critical, and I don't want to lose the minor berserk. And we can't lose our CC. We can't lose our form of major fracture, and the tooltip on it is nice, and it's a low costing ability. I don't want to lose my execute, and I don't want to lose my primary spammable. So we have a serious problem with space on the build, and so that ended up being the thing that we got rid of, and we solved it with Mighty Chudan. Now, when you look at Mighty Chudan, um, you can see the one piece is we have additional armor. So above and beyond the major resolve that it's giving me another almost 1,500 armor, both physical and spell. And it's also given me another 1,200 health. So basically I traded Mighty Chudan for the slot space on my ability bar, and I lost 12% additional healing. And my healing kit on this build is pretty good. I haven't had real problems with it, but we'll jump into that. Anyways, that's why we're running Chudan, why we're not running hardening armor or volatile armor. And anyways, Next piece that we are running is Shacklebreaker. This is kind of a reoccurring theme for me for builds that require a lot of magicka and a lot of stamina. And you also get a line of weapon damage or spell damage in this, and you also get recoveries in this, so that's nice. We are running prismatic enchants on everything except the helm. Um, but anyways, so we're running Shacklebreaker on this, and the next set that we are running is Himjaws. And I am also running Himjaws on my other Kratos, which is a Stamden. And if you've watched that video, you've seen why I'm running Himjaws. But stamina recovery is nice. Max stamina, the 3-piece is nice. Weapon critical, that's great too. And then the 5-piece. When you are within 28 meters of an enemy you are in combat with and the enemy dies, you gain Major Berserk for 5 seconds, increasing your damage done by 25%. Couple things about this set, and I explain it and actually show video proof in my other Kratos build video, but this has no cooldown. You yourself also do not have to be in combat. If you're in a group with people and they're out there killing mobs or killing things, things are dying, this 5-piece bonus, the Major Berserk, will proc over and over and over again, continuously. I'm going to share in the descriptions below. I took Ghost of Sparta out for Midyear Mayhem, and you can see how often this armor, the 5-piece, was procced. It was up almost all the time. We were in a very target rich environment, and we were going against, it was Zerg on Zerg action. If you've ever done Imperial City during Midyear Mayhem, it's absolute insane. It's insanity. So this armor, Major Berserk was up almost all the time, and I had Minor Berserk up at almost all the time as well. So that's a plus 33% damage output. And so Himjaws, you can get this armor set from Runes of Mazatoon. Just run it on normal, farm the pieces you need, and put it together. But the damage, this build does not lack damage. Even some people might kind of laugh at the weapon damage that it has because they're running something in the 5 to 6k range, but I can out damage them, I promise you. So I've tested it. Here's another thing. Right now, we do not have our jewelry infused for weapon damage. If I wanted to infuse these, I would actually push out another 300 weapon damage, say 350, 400 by the time medium armor, and the way scaling works with weapon damage. And so, if you wanted to add more damage to this build, you could. And I'll show you another way as well. But you want to, on dual wield, you want to run Nirnhoned on your main hand, and you want to run Sharpened on your offhand. Never run Nirnhoned, because of the way scaling works in your offhand with Nirnhoned. It just doesn't make sense. You get much more bang for your buck running Sharpened in your offhand. And I am running the Drain Health Poisons. It's basically just a poison that does damage over time for 4.5 seconds, and it heals me for most of the damage done. And so that has been helping a lot with the lack of healing right now with the changes to Battle Spirit and PvP and Greymore. So your back bar, you could run defending. These axes for Shacklebreaker are just what I had on hand, and so I have Nirnhoned and Sharpened on that. Something to note, if I put poisons on this back bar, and I use Quick Cloak and then I switch to my front bar, Quick Cloak from my back bar can trigger the poisons from my with Quick Cloak. So if you were running a type of poison on your back bar, you could actually trigger your poisons with Quick Cloak. Now, keeping them on your front bar kind of helps you decide who's going to get that damage, if you need that additional damage to help you burst people down. If you don't care and you just want to have great uptime on this poison, put it on both your front and back bar. And go with that. Let's look at, so we talked about why Himjaw, or why Chudans. Let's talk about why Himjaws. We talked about the fact that it has a in a target-rich environments, or if you're in a group, it's going to have a huge uptime to it. It can have indefinite uptime to it. Check the video out that I'll share in the descriptions below for Midyear Mayhem. Watch the whole thing. You'll get to see some crazy fights. It was a lot of fun with Ghost of Sparta here. Um, so we talked about why him jaws. Let's say you don't like an extra 25% damage. You want to run with a different set. Then I would say you could run with deadly. Deadly strikes would be another great option for you. Increase the damage of your physical bleed, poison, and disease over time, or channeled abilities, and two of your abilities that you're going to be running, which are Bloodthirst, or you could run the other more if I run this for the additional heals, and then your Noxious Breath. Those are going to be your damage over time abilities, and they'll both benefit from this, as well as your quick cloak from your back bar. And you could run Deadly Cloak, which is a more aggressive damage over time from this, but then you'll lose a major expedition. Speed is king, and being able to be mobile is very important right now to outmaneuver large groups, or kite, stretch out the attackers, whatever you need to do. So deadly strikes would be another option that you could run, and then another option that you could run would be Cyrodiil's Ward. And I would say if you're going to take this build into dueling, Himjaws is not going to do you any good in dueling. Okay. I'm not a fan of dueling. I duel for training purposes. That's it. To help people get better with their CCs and bouncing back in a fight and things like that, or testing different rotations or different play styles, but I'm not going to go stand outside a city and just duel people for the sake of dueling. I really enjoy PvP in Imperial City or Cyrodiil open world type stuff, and being able to use line of sight, being able to outmaneuver large groups, and so that's where I get my level of enjoyment. But if you are wanting to duel with this build, switch out Hemjaws for Cyrodiil's Ward, or the Ward of Cyrodiil. And the Ward of Cyrodiil, that 5-piece, when you deal melee damage, you apply Major Defile to the enemy for 3 seconds, reducing their healing received and health recovery by 30%. And this right now is pretty damn powerful if you take into account the changes that they've done to Battle Spirit, right? And so the healing reduction that we're looking at with Greymoor, if you were to be using Ward of Cyrodiil right now, what little healing they do have coming in is basically chopped yet again. So this would be a nice addition to the build if you're just looking for dueling. Switch out your Hemjaws for Cyrodiil's Ward. Let's see. So those are the two sets right now. We talked about increasing your weapon damage by infusing the jewelry if you want. We'll easily hit 4,500 weapon damage, probably more than that with scaling. And right now I have, let's look at our abilities. I'm going to explain why we have this stuff, and be sure to watch the video again below, and you'll get to see what I'm talking about in practice, and why we're doing what we're doing. But unbuffed right now, we're running Bloodthirst, and this is just a channeled ability or damage over time, and the final hit deals 300% more damage and heals you for 63% of the damage caused. And this is just another form of healing coming in right now. Once I feel good with the amount of heals that we have coming in, and I'd say things start to stabilize with healing in Greymoor, I will probably switch from Bloodthirst over to the other morph that does more damage. So that'll make the build even more dangerous. And we're running Whirling Blades, and Whirling Blades is my execute. You can see deals up to 100% more damage to enemies with less than 50% health. Another thing to note about this, the cost is low, but this ability is undodgeable. And my Stamden Kratos, when I'm trying to execute somebody and they're dodge rolling, and they're like one executioner or one reverse slice away from death, and I just can't land that last hit on them. It's annoying as can be, but Whirling Blades gets the job done. It's undodgeable, and so I really like that. This is also when you understand your damage output. This is a damage over time, and then that last burst damage is considered direct damage, and you can kind of tell that because the damage over time portion shows up in like orange print down here on the character, and then the last burst damage is in white up here, and it's not crit damage. It doesn't have an exclamation point next to it, unless it is crit damage, but so it's considered the damage that's down here in orange is considered damage over time, and the damage up top is considered direct damage, and so that helps you kind of figure out how to allot your CP points. This is direct damage, and so that's important to know. I'm using Noxious Breath, and it says that you can see that 7,000 poison damage. The initial hit is considered direct damage, and then the 11,000 is damage over 14 seconds. It's damage over time. This afflicts the enemy with major fracture, reducing their physical resistance by 50-80. And so this is how we strip their resistances, how we start the fight, and then we start putting the channeled bloodthirst into them. If we're going to CC them, we're going to use the best CC in the game, Fossilize. It's got a high cost, Magicka cost, but the nice thing about Fossilize is it's both a hard CC and a soft CC. And so this thing will stun and immobilize the target, and they have to break both of them separately. And the next ability we're using is Camouflage Hunter, and it's got a terrible radius on it if you're trying to, or range on it if you're trying to use this to find Nightblades. Occasionally you can get it done, but it says 6-meter radius, which seems more like a 1-meter radius. They have to be growing on your back to break them out of stealth with this thing. And it's got a really high cost too if you're trying to use it in that fashion. But you can put this on your bar, and it's just passively going to give you major savagery, and you're going to get minor berserk when you do critical damage to an enemy's flank. And an enemy's flank is considered the backside of them from one shoulder to the next, and so it's very easy in outnumbered situations or just during the fight to be able to do that with a Noxious Breath, right? You're going to be hitting people from their flank, no problem, with just your regular rotation on this build. I'm running Ferocious Leap on my front bar. This is not my go-to ultimate. It is my go-to ultimate in BGs. I think Ferocious Leap tooltip and Take Flight tooltip are very similar in no CP. In CP campaigns, the Take Flight tooltip will go much higher, and you can make this a very scary number for Take Flight. However, you don't get the damage shield. And because I'm fighting outnumbered situations during Midyear Mayhem, we went with Ferocious Leap so that way I could get the damage shield off. So I could leap into the group, damage shield's going to cover me, so I can add a dodge roll and a couple vigors and a couple heals and line of sight, or I can just jump in and stay in for a second while they're burning my shield. If that's the play though, that's what I'm going to do. I would much rather have enough ultimate for my back bar where we'll use Corrosive Armor. And this thing is awesome. At 200 ultimate, basically it says limiting incoming damage to 3% of your max health, and it also deals 1100 poison damage to nearby enemies for 12 seconds. And so you've got 12 seconds of just beast mode with this. You're doing a little bit of damage to people, but it's limiting the amount of damage that they can do to you. And if you're watching that video, there's a handful of moments where I hit Corrosive Armor and I just go in, and the entire Zerg will blow their ultimates on me trying to kill me. They're dumping the house on me, and that's exactly what I want because it's limiting the incoming damage to 3% of my health. They could still chop me down while I'm in Corrosive Armor, so you still have to play smart about it. But basically, I just want to hit Corrosive Armor and get right in the middle of and draw as much attention as I can, let them blow their ultimates and try and bursting me down. Meanwhile, my team comes running in, and the enemies, all their ultimates are expended at that point, and we just run through them. And so that's been working out really well for me. Also, another thing too is while active, this ability and your direct damage dealt ignores enemy physical resistance. And so the common play is if you look at my direct damage, Whirling Blades is my direct damage. The initial hit from Noxious Breath is my direct damage. And so the common play is to get into the middle of the group, make sure you got your corrosive armor on, and then we're hitting our noxious breath and hitting our spin to win, and that's going to put enough damage. That's ignoring resistances, and so spin to win, whirling blades is going to be hitting a lot of people and hitting them very hard, and so that was working very well. Molten armaments. So this was part of the decision between balancing magicka versus stamina abilities, and I like the duration on it, 36 seconds. And while I lose out on a potential burst heal that Rally would give us if once Rally stabilizes and is more consistent with that burst heal, Molten Armaments, the duration on it, and it increases my heavy attack damage by 50%. And so while I'm running dual wield, it gives my dual wield heavy attacks a much sharper bite. And I like that. And so this has been working out really well for me. Fragmented shield, the most important thing about this is you gain major mending, increasing your healing done by 25% for 6 seconds. And so basically I'll just make sure that I pop this and then I hit my heals and we're going to be good. Resolving Vigor, if you're a stamina class, you should be running that almost everything. And Cauterize, we're running this. This is a very nice heal, and as a matter of fact, this heal is so nice that it's illegal in a lot of upper end dueling guilds and dueling tournaments. They actually make Cauterize an illegal ability because the heal on it is just too juicy. So good to know, right? And then, like I said, we're running Quick Cloak. This is our form of major expedition mobility. Our speed is king, and we need that. It also does damage over time, and that's very important. And it reduces the damage of area attacks by 25%. So this is going to help make us feel a little bit more tanky. We're taking in less damage. And then we already talked about corrosive armor, and those are the abilities. As far as passives go, make sure you get all your class passives, super important. And weapons, we're running dual wield, so grab dual wield passives, and we're running dual wield. We are a 5 medium 2 heavy, so make sure you get all your medium armor, and you're only going to need the first 3 of your heavy armor. And if you wanted to increase your weapon damage on your front bar even higher, instead of running Ferocious Leap or Take Flight, run Dawnbreaker. And because of a passive down here, this one right here, increase the weapon damage by 3% for each fighter guild ability. Right now we're only running Camo Hunter, but if you were to drop Dawnbreaker on there, that'd go up to 6%. So you'd gain another 3% weapon damage on your main bar. So we might hit 4,700, something like that, with the current build, just by infusing and switching to Dawnbreaker if you want to do that. And if you do go the Dawnbreaker route, run the Morph. Dawnbreaker Smiting. Dawnbreaker Smiting is going to have a stun to it, so that way you don't have to burn magic. With Fossilize, you can just hit Dawnbreaker Smiting and drop everybody in front of you, and it'll be awesome. And we are a Nord. I like the rugged passive, physical and spell resistance. Almost 4k extra of that. Stalwart gives us additional ult gen, and we are immune to the chilled status effect. That's great. We get extra health here. Let's look at our abilities buffed up. Our food is expired. We are using our Artaeum Takeaway Broth, and you can see we're running the Warrior Mundus Stone. So our Artaeum Takeaway Broth will give you max health, health recovery, max stam, and stamina recovery. And yeah, so let's buff up here. We're going to look at the stats real quick. You can see we're at just under 4,100 weapon damage without the infused jewelry. We've got physical penetration is just under 10,000, 1,700 in our stam recovery. That's pretty nice considering we live and die off our battle roar passive. And you can see we're in CP Imperial City right now, so 27, 28,000 health is nice. 14,000 max magicka is getting the job done with the amount of magicka abilities that we have. And our max stamina is at 31,000. And this will drop just a hair below 30,000 if we infuse all three of our jewelry, and that will still be fine. And so let's look at our resistances here again real quick. We don't need to buff up for that actually. We're wearing Chudans. That is right. So our physical and spell resistance, we're looking at 31,000 and we're looking at 28,000. And that's not too bad for a 5 medium, 2 heavy armor. We're pretty beefy. Critical resistance just under 3k, and that is great. And let's jump into our CP and we are done. We've got nothing in the apprentice, and when we come over here, Master at Arms, we got 61 points, so that puts us right over the 21% direct damage increase. We've got 25 points into light armor, so that way our light and light physical weapon experts, so our light and heavy attacks will hit 15% harder. I'm kind of torn between taking this out and moving it over to Thaumaturge, so that way our 2 dots, our damage over times, hit a little harder. And I might play around with that and we'll see. 61 points into precise strikes gives us a nice 21% to increase to our critical damage and critical healing. And piercing, we've got 33 points into that for just under 3k additional physical penetration. We are on our offensive bar too. We're running dual wield mauls, so that way we get additional penetration. And mighty, we've got 64 points for an extra 13% with our physical, poison, and disease damage. And I think we pretty much do all of those. 61 points into ironclad, so it gives us an extra 21%. Reduction to direct damage attacks, 60 points into medium armor for an extra 4,400 physical resistance, 60 points into spell shield for an extra 4,400 resistance, 25 into crit resistance, so we got an extra 700 there. Nothing here in hardy or elemental defender. This is how I run most of my builds. I don't really care about this. I want to run max stats, so I want my physical resistances to be as high as I can, and I want my spell resistances to be as high as I can. And a lot of people say, well, you're not getting the Unchained passive. I don't care about the Unchained passive. I'm going to cut 80% off of that vigor that comes right after I'm CC'd, and I'm not going to try and build around that just to get to that part. Maybe if I spent more time dueling, that might be a thing, but right now, with open world, it's not needed, and I like where my stats are. I get a lot of people that say, how the hell do you push those type of resistances? And that's how I put points into the armor focus and points into spell resistance. We got 64 points into quick recovery for an extra 13% healing received. 61 points into Warlord. We are going to be CC'd. We will need to break free, so this is going to cut it by 21%. 1 point in the Siphoner, so they have an extra thing that they need to cleanse. 64 points into Mooncalf puts us at a nice 13% additional stamina recovery. 64 points here in Arcanus, so that we've got an extra 13 Magicka recovery. And then I've got 61 points into tumbling. I do a lot of dodge rolling to avoid a ton of damage, and you can see that in the video. And so this cuts our dodge rolling cost by 21%. And occasionally, not very often, Kratos will block, and that's mostly when we're on our back bar and we're block casting for whatever reason, and we're in the middle of a lot of damage. We'll block cast, but more times than not, we're not doing this. We're dodge rolling, resetting the fight. And I've just got a point dump of a couple points into Befoul to cut the healing reduction. And that is the CP. So again, we've got Kratos, Ghost of Sparta, running Shacklebreaker Himjaws right now, and you could switch out Himjaws for Ward of Cyrodiil if you're doing duels with this. Check out the video below. You can actually see me during Midyear Mayhem with this build. It was a lot of fun, and I put him in some really, really tough situations, and the build is awesome. And then you can also, I'll share the other Kratos, the Stamden build, if you want to see that. I've got a lot of footage of wiping Zergs and stuff like that on that build as well. But anyways, my two Kratoses, these are the guys I run people down, hunt groups with in the sewers, and it's been a lot of fun. So you guys be safe out there. COVID's still in effect. We've got protests and riots going on and all kinds of crazy stuff. Spend as much time with your family and be safe, please. Thanks.